Today I'm going to be repeating Leslie's claim that rap and hip-hop music influences violent behavior. She had two secondary claims that were lyrics artists use are used to degrade women, and after listening to rap or hip-hop music, a person becomes more accepting of violent acts and the use of alcohol and substances. My proposition is that Leslie provides insufficient and irrelevant evidence to support her claim, and thus it can be dismissed. My response to Leslie's first claim is that although it is supported with sufficient evidence, the claim itself is the problem. She uses an irrelevant thesis to support her proposition. Leslie proves the point that some lyrics are used to degrade women, but this is not the point she is disputing and trying to prove. This claim and all the evidence provided, such as the research that 15% of songs had degrading lyrics and supported male sexual bravado, doesn't have a connection to violent behavior, and she fails to specify how degrading women leads to violent behavior, and thus leaves a gap in her argument. Leslie made a hasty conclusion that degrading women in song lyrics creates violent behavior, but presents no connection of the two. This claim confuses the audience as to what is being argued, and doesn't support her proposition in any way. Thus, this claim and its evidence is irrelevant and can be dismissed. Now we can go to her second claim. The study that Leslie uses to support her secondary claim that a person becomes more accepting of violent acts and substance abuse after listening to rap or hip-hop music has many problems to it. The study that 11 people watched violent music videos, 11 people watched non-violent music videos, and 11 didn't watch any music video at all. The results of the study were that people who watched the violent music videos were more accepting of violent behavior when being questioned after. The fact that only 33 people participated in this study is concerning, as Leslie is using a sweeping generalization and assuming that what is true for 33 people is true for everyone. Another factor that is concerning is that they didn't question the people before the survey, so they had nothing to compare the results to in order to conclude that the people who watched the violent music videos were more accepting to these violent acts. Also, the study didn't mention how the participants were chosen, so there is the possibility of bias. This secondary claim is thus insufficient in supporting her proposition. Lastly, I found several studies that suggested the opposite of Leslie's claim. One such example is the use of rap and hip-hop music as a means of therapy, also referred to as hip-hop therapy. In Music Therapy Perspectives, Volume 9, Issue 1, a study by therapist Joy Wallen is presented with the results that music therapy activities of rap and hip-hop genre can increase the self-esteem and self-confidence of adolescents who have been sexually abused. An article was also written in 2000 about the Vice President of Behavioral Health at Harvard Street Neighborhood Health Center, who used rap therapy as a psychotherapeutic intervention for working with at-risk youth. The article portrayed and congratulated Elegant because of the positive outcomes of his work, and he wrote a book about the positive correlation between rap and hip-hop music in adolescents using positive coping skills. In conclusion, Leslie's proposition can be dismissed because she used irrelevant evidence with no correlation to her proposition and insufficient evidence to reach her conclusion. There is also sufficient evidence supporting the opposite of her claim and showing that these genres of music can have a positive effect on people. Thank you.
Right, structurally everything's fine. On the first point, you basically argue that the whole point is irrelevant as it's developed because it doesn't address the issue of violent behavior or aggressive behavior. It only addresses the issue of their perception of people and their acceptance of certain kinds of stereotypes, for instance. And I thought that was pretty on the nose, pointing out that we've got some thesis here that has been documented. There's good evidence on it. The problem is it's not the claim that was being made. There might have been a better claim for the advocate to make for that point to be relevant, but the link to violence, for instance, as you challenge, is a little bit thin. I thought your reasoning on that was pretty good. On the second argument that they're more accepting, your challenge first starts off by suggesting that the study is potentially inadequate. 33 people does sound like it's a small study. You don't necessarily tell us what would be appropriate, and I'm not sure that there is a number that we could look at and say, oh, well, we need to meet a minimum end for this research to be reliable. You do suggest that there were some questions about how the research was conducted. You said that there wasn't any comparative data or no baseline that they're operating from. You don't cite the advocate study. I don't get a direct quote on this. That seems to be your interpretation of what's being said there. So the proof on that, I think, is a little bit thin. And then you kind of did the same thing, asking a question about how people were selected to be participants in the study and suggesting there could have been some bias as a consequence. I don't know what bias you could see and where that bias would come from. Most research like this is done by selecting, guess what, college students out of the basic psychology classes. That's where most of them end up getting some of the credit for their class. So I think there is a potential argument here, but unless you had something specific about the way the research was being done, I think it's just a couple of presses that need a little bit more development. However, the counterclaim that you're making on this point, I thought you did a nice job of suggesting that there is a benefit from this kind of music, that it does in fact improve self-esteem. I'm not sure how directly that relates to the advocate's point. So I don't want to say you're guilty of making the same irrelevant thesis that you claim the advocate was making on the first point, but there's a possibility that this issue has some of the same problems with it. However, I did think you did a good job providing documentation for the point that you're presenting there, and I thought the summary was very effective. Thank you.